Good afternoon, friends. I hope you are well today. Thank you for joining me for a couple of minutes as I share a thought with you and the peace of Christ wherever you are at this time. If you're watching in real time or a little bit later, I hope that it is well with you in body, mind, and spirit. And I want to share with you a thought that's framed as a question today, but it's meant to be something that really speaks to acknowledging the reality we're in, but also with that acknowledgement of current reality, to look in hope toward the future, in the future in which we always celebrate that God is with us and God is doing something new. But the question is, will we be singing at Christmas? That's a question that just came to my mind the other day because Christmas, for me as it is, I know with so many of you, is one of the high points of the year, and especially as we gather joyfully as a church. And one of the high points of worship for me always, not just at Christmas, but every Sunday, every time we gather, is the act of singing, which is both a powerful image for me, that of praise of God, our Creator and Sustainer and Redeemer, but also in actuality, a physical practice of worship that has been most important. I've been singing a long time, and that's been an important part of my private life, yes, but especially my public worship of God with and together with God's people. So that question comes to the fore in looking at where we are right now to the months ahead and where we will be sometime in the future. Will we be singing at Christmas? Now, you say, well, why are you asking whether we will be singing? Well, in returning to worship, certainly in the immediate return to worship in a few weeks, as we begin to gather again, some things will be different. And I'll be honest with you, while I'm looking forward to seeing everybody who I will be able to see, and yes, being able to worship and feel a sense of being together in that way, things will be different just by necessity. From concerns with health, we will have to do some physical distancing, and we will have to forego some of the practices that we are so familiar with, including singing close together. Certainly not shaking hands for a while, not embracing as we might otherwise, but also not singing and singing shoulder to shoulder or close together or facing one another. I'm a bit troubled by it. You can tell. That's why I'm even raising the question. It occurs to me, for one, that coming back to worship that way, where you're coming back to worship but you're kind of staying away, feels a little bit like kissing your sister. Now, some of you who are old enough will have not missed the allusion I just made. The famous University of Alabama football coach Paul Bear Bryant, who, when he retired, was the winningest coach of college football, was famous. One of his most famous quotes was, "A tie is like kissing your sister." Now, let me be quick to tell you, that was another place and time. That's certainly from the male perspective, obviously, he's talking about, and is way before the Me Too movement began. But think about what he's saying. For Bear Bryant, Coach Bear Bryant, winning was so important, so that he certainly didn't want to lose, but even to tie was just much less than satisfying. It was not the same thing as kissing the beloved one that you covet, or the person who thrills you. It was like kissing your sister. Coming back to worship may feel a little bit like that too in some ways. Because what we're used to, at least for me personally, is of course the embrace, whether it's literal or not, that we receive and share together as God's people, and not pushing away. I read a profound article by David Brooks, a columnist for the New York Times, and it was some weeks ago. It was back in March, when we were just starting to get more and more aware of the need to take precautions and physically distance and everything, and some of the implications that we would be looking at as a result of this pandemic. But he notes in a kind of short piece that is historically filled with historical information that in the aftermath this has really struck me. In the aftermath of natural disasters, we typically tend to come together as people. And many of you will quickly make the connection with that. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina on the Gulf Coast, we'll remember how we did that, how people found us, how we were united, and some of the most, not only in relief work and getting back on our feet in every way, with our homes, businesses, etc., but we remember in worship together as God's people. We didn't have a lot of infrastructure. Where in Hancock County where we were, we didn't have a grocery store. But when we gathered as God's people, and we had people who were locally who were able to be there, as well as people who came from wherever on God's green earth to be with there, to help us in our time of need, it was an embracing. It was a coming together, and it was powerful. Another preacher asked me the other day, more of a statement than a question, but said, I guess this is the end of the passing of the peace. Talking about the worship service where we extend a hand to one another, the right hand of fellowship or of acknowledgement, of greeting our neighbors and sharing the peace of God. Well, it is perhaps for a while. But it goes right along with the same question. Will we be singing at Christmas? Come to find out that singing is one of the most dangerous activities that we are involved in as we come back to public worship. Without getting too graphic, what's involved in the movement of the lungs and what's brought up through the lungs and the whole vocal system, and then what's expelled when we sing, places perhaps the biggest threat in people and among people that we may be looking at in the face of this pandemic. The challenge and the hope, where those things are always coupled together, is that we not get so fatigued or bombed out, if you will, with these measures that are necessary, that we would somehow be fatigued in spirit, which affects us physically as well. The fact of it is, as Brooks points out in his article, that during the pandemic and aftermath of the Spanish flu of 1918, many people were, and their compassion also wilted as a result, and they're caring for one another. That's certainly not what I anticipate this time because of many different factors in this pandemic and in our world. Just being able to speak to you like this, right, is one example. But to be aware of how that happens and can happen, it's as if people are fatigued in spirit, where they lose that spark, that passion that God is always seeking to bring into flame. And that is where we realize that our hope is in God, and there will be a time when we sing together again. Of this I am certain. It's a time that we look toward in the future with a question mark, as we do so many other things. But there will be a time when we will shake and embrace and sing. And we look forward to that. Right now, a few items I'd like to share with you as we're looking at June right now, not before June, I should say, before we would begin coming back together to worship as God's people. This is partly by advice from our Bishop Swanson of the Mississippi Conference, and also just an assessment of where we are with our health and political experts and what they tell us about what is safe to do. And then we'll be taking precautions, some of which I've named already. You may have your temperature checked at the door. You may be asked to sit here and not there, and so forth. But we will be resuming that soon. I did want to, in a few weeks soon, I did want to share with you that there's an opportunity to participate and help others in the midst of this that is very safe but helps much. You will have seen perhaps in the weekly newsletter that our district response team is short of storm buckets. These are buckets full of supplies that people who go to help others in the aftermath of tornadoes and such are able to take, that have these items that are immediately helpful. The listing of those cleaning supplies is in the newsletter, has been the last couple of weeks, will be again, and found on our website. But we will be having at St. Paul on Monday morning a drop-off time. If you would just like to bring one or more, any of those supplies by the church from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. George and Susan are planning to be there on hand, and they will get them from you, and then they will take them in, and they will kind of sort them out before we send them on to be put together as buckets. So know about that opportunity, and it's coming up Monday morning, 7 to 12. And this is kind of hot off the press, but we are looking at having a Memorial Weekend drive-in service at St. Paul. In the east parking lot, of course, with cars spaced apart and safety measures already in place as we are together in our cars and in the Spirit of the Lord, giving thanks with that theme of Memorial Day, all who have served our country and died, and giving thanks to God for them and all of our blessings. We're looking at doing that the Sunday night before Memorial Day. Specific details on that will be coming up. So stay tuned, in short order. So stay tuned. So you tell me, will we be singing for Christmas? I will. I will be singing at home anyway. And I would hope, the optimistic side of me says, we will be singing together as the body. We'll see about that in ways that are safe. But God wants us to keep singing in our hearts and to not lose the trust, not lose the faith, not lose the spark, because that is his gift to us, that we are to nurture, that we are to treasure in such a way that fatigue will not get us down for long. So may you go in the spirit of strength, in the spirit of Christ, in goodwill in every way. And I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless you.